Welcome to the We Can Fix Climate Change podcast, where we bring the stories featured in our weekly Substack newsletter to life. In today's episode, we'll cover California's new climate laws affecting big companies like Exxon, Apple, and Chevron, the controversial teaching of middle school textbooks with climate misinformation in Texas, ExxonMobil acquiring pioneer natural resources to solidify their position in the shale oil industry, New York denying subsidies for green energy builders, Biden's hydrogen investment, the impact of climate change on amphibian decline, Stockholm's plan to ban petrol and diesel cars in the city center from 2025, and the collapsing insurance safety net due to climate risks. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay informed with our latest episodes.
The Conversations recently featured an article titled, Exxon, Apple, and other corporate giants will have to disclose all their emissions under California's new climate laws that will have a global impact. The legislation stipulates that companies with a revenue exceeding $1 billion must disclose their emissions. This requirement applies to any company seeking to conduct business within California, and it encompasses both direct and indirect emissions. The new law will necessitate that numerous major publicly traded and privately owned corporations carefully monitor and report nearly all of their greenhouse gas emissions if they operate in California. This includes emissions arising from their supply chains, business travel, employees' commuting activities, as well as how customers utilize their products. As a result, oil and gas companies such as Chevron will likely be required to account for emissions stemming from vehicles that use their gasoline. Similarly, Apple will have to take into consideration the materials utilized in the production of iPhones. These strict guidelines demonstrate the California government's commitment to addressing climate change and promoting environmental responsibility within the business sector. By requiring disclosure of emissions, the state hopes to encourage greater transparency and accountability as companies work towards reducing their environmental impact.
According to an article from Scientific American, there is concern that new middle school textbooks may perpetuate climate change misinformation and lead students to believe that humans are only partially responsible for the climate crisis. While these books have ignited controversy, advocates for climate education have urged the state to adopt them because, despite their flaws, they do contain significant climate content that explains the scientific basis of climate change. This is in contrast to textbooks adopted by the state 10 years ago, which lacked substantial climate-related material. However, some individuals affiliated with the fossil fuel industry, including a congressional representative, believe that these textbooks represent an intrusion of what they refer to as the radical climate lobby into the realm of education. These supporters have called on people to pressure the state to reject the adoption of these materials. Overall, the debate surrounding these new middle school textbooks highlights the ongoing struggle to provide accurate climate education to students while also acknowledging the influence of various interest groups in shaping educational materials.
ExxonMobil Corp. Has announced its intention to acquire Pioneer Natural Resources, based in Irving, Texas. Pioneer Natural Resources is widely acknowledged as a prominent player in exploration and production, particularly in the Permian Basin, spanning western Texas and southeastern New Mexico. Should this deal move forward, ExxonMobil Corp. Is poised to become the primary U.S. shale oil producer. This calculated move appears aimed at securing a leading role in the American shale oil market. While both ExxonMobil Corp. And Pioneer Natural Resources Company are prominent figures in the energy sector, it's essential to view this potential merger through a critical lens. They bring extensive experience and established track records, but the implications of this union on climate and sustainability need careful consideration. As the industry anticipates further progress and regulatory evaluations, the outcome of this deal has the potential to significantly influence the trajectory of the U.S. shale oil market and, by extension, the broader energy sector, considering the pressing concerns of climate change and the imperative to transition towards more sustainable practices.
According to a recent report from the New York Times, green energy builders sought billions more in subsidies. New York said no. This article highlights the challenges faced by renewable energy developers in New York State. Under New York state law, there is a requirement for renewable energy to account for 70% of the state's energy consumption by 2030. However, despite the ambitious renewable energy goals, the developers of these green energy projects have been denied additional subsidies from the government. This denial of subsidies has put the developers in a difficult position. On one hand, they are facing higher than expected costs for their projects. On the other hand, they have contracts with the state that might be challenging to fulfill without additional financial support. As a result, the developers are left with the tough decision of either absorbing these unforeseen costs or potentially breaking their contracts with the state. This has far-reaching consequences, not only for the developers, but also for the renewable energy sector in New York State.
Inside Climate News has published an article entitled, "Biden Announces Huge Hydrogen Investment. How Much Will It Help the Climate?" which highlights President Biden's latest efforts in combating climate change. The report mentions that 3 out of 7 hydrogen production hubs will utilize natural gas and carbon capture technologies. Notably, 2 of these hubs will be located in Pennsylvania. Advocates and policy experts emphasize the potential of a clean hydrogen industry in reducing climate pollution, particularly in sectors where low-carbon alternatives are scarce, such as steel production, fertilizer manufacturing, and aviation. However, some experts caution that the expanded use of hydrogen must be accompanied by robust regulations in order to avoid undermining climate goals and perpetuating reliance on fossil fuels. And the potential cost to the government in terms of subsidies could potentially amount to several $100 billion.
According to a report from phys.org, climate change has emerged as the primary driver behind the decline of amphibian populations. Amphibians, being highly sensitive to alterations in their habitat, are facing acute vulnerability. What sets amphibians apart is their reliance on their skin for respiration and their lack of protective features such as feathers or scales. Consequently, the rising temperatures resulting from climate change pose a significant threat. As temperatures increase, their bodies dry out at a faster rate, and their crucial breeding grounds are lost. Regrettably, climate change now stands as the foremost cause for the alarming reduction in amphibian populations. Among the species most affected by this phenomenon are salamanders and newts. For instance, in the United States, 5 salamander species have observed declines in their population status. This decline has been attributed to factors such as fires and the decreased moisture in the soil, which are intensified by droughts and wildfires associated with climate change, as stated by scientists. The loss of these species has broader implications for the delicate ecosystem they inhabit, making it imperative to address the underlying causes of climate change.
According to an article from The Guardian, Stockholm is set to implement a ban on petrol and diesel cars from the city center starting in 2025. This ban will cover a zone of 20 blocks, though a decision regarding the expansion of this zone will be made in early 2025. The City Council aims to assess the overall impact of the ban before deciding on potential expansion. While several cities have implemented measures to combat air pollution, Stockholm's ban stands out as it goes beyond what most others have done. Paris, Athens, and Madrid have only banned diesel cars, whereas London has introduced a charging scheme that targets the most polluting combustion engines. Although the primary focus is on fully electric cars, Stockholm will allow larger vans with plug-in hybrid engines as well. Exceptions will be made for ambulances and police cars, as well as vehicles carrying individuals with documented disabilities. By banning petrol and diesel cars from its city center, Stockholm is demonstrating a commitment to reducing air pollution and promoting cleaner modes of transportation. This move aligns with global efforts to address climate change and improve the overall sustainability of urban areas.
Grist has undertaken a 4-part series examining the insurance safety net, shedding light on some notable findings. The impact of climate risks has led to the gradual collapse of this safety net. With the acceleration of climate change, insured losses have escalated from $4.6 billion in 2000 to a staggering $100 billion by 2022. This alarming trend has set in motion a cycle wherein rising premiums prompt certain individuals to forego coverage altogether, resulting in even higher premiums for those who remain insured. Consequently, the average homeowner has witnessed a substantial increase of 21% in their insurance premiums since 2015. This significant rise reflects the mounting pressure placed on the insurance industry to manage the growing risks associated with climate change.
In today's episode, we discussed California's new climate laws impacting big companies, controversial textbooks in Texas, ExxonMobil's acquisition, New York denying subsidies for green energy builders, the debate over blue hydrogen methods, the impact of climate change on amphibians, Stockholm's ban on petrol and diesel cars, and the collapsing insurance safety net due to climate risks. Thank you for tuning in to the We Can Fix Climate Change podcast. As always, don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your friends, and visit all our social media channels. And consider checking out our newsletter with more stories and links at wecanfixclimatechange.substack.com. Links are, as always, in the description box. See you next week.